Have you ever wondered what an NFL redraft might look like? That is what we're going to be doing in today's video. We're going to be taking every NFL player and putting them into an open draft pool and seeing what order they would go in. I'm going to do one round. Each team gets a pick, 1 through 32, and the teams are completely randomized. The order, it has nothing to do based off like standings last year. I got this list from randomlists.com. So this list of teams was completely randomized. The teams don't even really matter. It's really more about the order of the players. That's what matters here. I just kind of threw the teams in to be a little more interactive so you guys could see, you know, what player your team ended up getting. But obviously in a redraft, age is going to be one of the most important factors, because if you're starting your team completely from scratch, you're going to want a younger guy you can build around for, 5 to 10 years. So keep that in mind. Age is going to play a big factor in this, and of course, importance of position. We're going to talk about that a lot throughout this, but let's get into the Steel City Sports 2024 NFL Redraft. With the first pick in the NFL Redraft, the Miami Dolphins select Patrick Mahomes. I know, what a shocker, but we don't really need to spend much time on this. Patrick Mahomes is by far the best player in football, the most important position in football. Just led the Chiefs to a repeat. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, a 2-time league MVP, and he's only at the age of 28. So realistically, Patrick Mahomes could play another 10-plus years in the NFL at elite football. So like I said, we're not going to spend much time on this. Mahomes is the first guy off the board. With the second overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Cleveland Browns select Josh Allen. Now, everyone knows Mahomes was going to go number 1. I feel like number 2 is really where you can start having a discussion as to who's the second guy off the board. In my opinion, it would be Josh Allen. He's the guy we've seen come the closest to recapturing the talent of Patrick Mahomes. And although I do think Joe Burrow is the better overall quarterback, in the fact that he has slain the dragon of Mahomes, he has gotten to a Super Bowl, Josh Allen, just in an open vacuum in terms of restarting every team, Josh Allen provides that ungodly, like never seen before, freakish athletic talent while also having arguably the best arm in the NFL. He's just one of the biggest physical anomalies we've ever seen in the history of the league. He's basically has the athleticism of Cam Newton paired with the arm ability of Brett Favre. So I feel like the talent is just too off the chain, and also with the fact that Joe Burrow and some of the other quarterbacks have had injury concerns. Josh Allen's a guy who's really never been injured, although he does play that physical style of football. That could be one thing to argue to maybe take someone else over Josh Allen, but he is 28 years old. I don't see him playing another 10 years of this style of football just because he has taken a lot of hits. But I think it's easy to say you're going to get at least another 5 years of high-end elite football out of Josh Allen, so I think that that's good enough to take him number 2 overall. With the third overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Lamar Jackson. So what's the Chiefs' consolation prize to losing Patrick Mahomes? Oh, the reigning league MVP, Lamar Jackson. So he's at the age of 27, so I think it's pretty feasible to expect another 5 or 7 years of elite football from Lamar. And if you would have said this a couple years ago, like taking him this high, I probably would have pushed back on it. But this is really the year we saw Lamar Jackson grow as a passer, a pure pocket passer. This was probably the best year of Lamar Jackson as just an overall complete player. I know he's had years where he's had better stats. His stats have jumped off the page. But in terms of playing clean, efficient NFL football, this was the best year of Lamar Jackson in terms of his ability to carve up the field. It was definitely his best throwing year. On top of that, he still has some of the best raw athleticism we've ever seen at the quarterback position. I think he's already in the conversation for the best scrambling quarterback in the history of football. And now that he's come such a long way as a passer, that dual threat ability, I think he would easily be a top 3 pick in this draft. And the fact that he's 27, you've still got a lot of great prime years from Lamar Jackson. So yeah, like I said earlier, the teams were randomized. Of course, the Chiefs had to get another great quarterback. With the fourth overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Minnesota Vikings select Justin Herbert. So obviously Mahomes is in a category of his own when it comes to the quarterbacks, but I feel like Herbert is right there. Maybe not quite to the level of Lamar or Josh Allen right now, but he's right there. In the next couple years, he's going to be on that level, and he's only 26 years old. So you could realistically be getting like the next 10 years of elite football from Justin Herbert, and he's not a guy who gets out of the pocket that much. Like, he can scramble when he needs to, but his game isn't so reliant on that like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. So he's not going to be taking as many of those big hits. You could see him lasting a lot longer. You know, he walked into the NFL as a rookie and broke Peyton Manning's touchdown record as a rookie and has only gone up in his production. You know, I think he's already had 2 years with over 5,000 passing yards, which is just completely insane when you look at how these DBs are defending in today's NFL. And he's still able to just carve them up. And I think the most surprising or the most impressive thing about Justin Herbert is it feels like it doesn't really matter who's out there at the receiver position. Like, he's had great receivers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But those guys have been injured a lot, particularly Mike Williams, and it feels like it doesn't miss a beat. Like, he does not miss a beat whenever those guys are out. He's able to just be so productive. I feel like he could take you and me at the wide receiver position and he'd be fine. Just the raw production from Justin Herbert and the fact that he's only 26, I think he would go really high in any NFL redraft. With the 5th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Buffalo Bills select C.J. Stroud. Just led the year before he got to Houston, they were a 2-win team, and he led them to win their division, win a playoff game against the NFL's #1 pass defense, the Cleveland Browns. Easily had the best rookie season in the history of the NFL, and at the age of 22 is already widely considered to be like a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. I think this is a no-brainer. You could realistically get 15 more years of elite football out of C.J. Stroud, and I think you could even make the argument he could go even before 5, just for the simple fact that he is 22 years old, and he's only going to get better. Like, the season he just had was elite football. That was his fucking rookie year. Imagine how good he's going to be in 5 years from now. So, CJ, some of you guys might say this is recency biased or something putting him this high, but for the simple fact that he's already an elite quarterback at 22, I think he easily goes this high. And similar to the Chiefs, the Bills are losing their franchise quarterback, but wow, what a consolation prize they got here with CJ. With the 6th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Houston Texans select Joe Burrow. So what a coincidence that they were only 1 pick away from getting their guy CJ, but Joe Burrow, not too shabby to get him at 6. So if I were to rank the quarterbacks based on right now, I think Joe Burrow is number 2. Like I said earlier, I think he is the biggest threat to Patrick Mahomes in today's NFL. However, I can't take him number 2 because of the injury concerns. That's why Joe Burrow has slid down in this draft. I would have him probably going 2 or 3, but for the simple fact that you look at his career, he's been in the NFL for 4 years. He's going into year 5 right now, but his 4 years in the NFL, 2 of the 4 years, he was hurt. His rookie year, he was having a great year, and then he got hurt, missed basically half the year. You got the 2 years in the middle where they go to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game. That's why he's getting drafted this high. But then you had this year where he got hurt again. So it's kind of like a mixed bag with Burrow, but I'm willing to bet on that high-end upside. He walked into the NFL already as a really good quarterback, got to a Super Bowl with a laughingstock franchise, the Bengals. He's turned them into a real contending team. But think of the Bengals before Joe Burrow got there. They were a laughingstock. You know, there's a reason they had that #1 overall pick to take him. And just in his 2nd year with that team, took them to a freaking Super Bowl and was a play away from winning that Super Bowl. The only guy in NFL history not named Tom Brady to beat Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game. And yeah, he did that in Arrowhead. So I have my concerns with the injuries, but I've seen him make big-time plays on the biggest stages, and he's come very close to winning a Super Bowl. He's only 27, so even if the injury stuff does kind of bother you, you still have a long time for Joe Burrow to play, at least 10 more years. With the 7th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Detroit Lions select Jalen Hurts. Now, it feels like the public opinion of Jalen Hurts has really dropped, especially after this last season with the Eagles, like completely self-imploding. But for me, I'm not one of those guys. I still see Jalen Hurts as the stud he is. You go back to the 2022 season, he was the runner-up in MVP and led the Eagles to the Super Bowl. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. Despite losing the game, he was better than Mahomes. Go look at the numbers in that Super Bowl. And yeah, last year was weird. There was a point where they were 11-0, and then they went on to lose their last 6 games and got embarrassed in the wild card match against Tampa. However, Yeah, it's not like Hurts was great in those last couple games, but he wasn't the reason why they were losing those games. It was more so on the secondary, the defense, the coordinators didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Both those coordinators got fired now. I'm expecting a massive bounce back year for the Eagles. And just from a raw talent perspective, he provides that dual threat ability, and he basically does everything at a really good level. You could argue he's not like super elite at any one thing, but he's just so well-rounded as a passer, his arm strength, his accuracy, and then of course you have the running and athleticism from Jalen Hurts. So I get it. A lot of people out there are down on him, but I still see him as one of the best talents in the NFL, and I think he would go really high in any NFL redraft. With the 8th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the New York Giants select Trevor Lawrence. I feel like I'm one of the few people out there that actually still thinks Trevor Lawrence is good. And I remember the discourse around when he got that contract like a week or two ago. Everyone was like, what the fuck are the Jags doing? Well, my thing is like, what was their alternative? This is the quarterback market right now. This is what you pay your quarterback if you're going to keep him on the team. And what were the Jags going to do? Just let him walk and have who as their starting quarterback? That's what I don't get. Like, everyone wanted to freak out about the dollar amounts. Well, yeah, that is what quarterbacks are paid in 2024. Like, what do you want them to do? Start from scratch? I get it. Trevor Lawrence has been a disappointment in terms of the fact that he was one of the most hyped prospects ever. He was looked at as the prodigy, but let's just go year by year through his career real quick. Year one, he had I think you can argue the worst coach in the history of the NFL, Urban Meyer. If you would have put Patrick Mahomes with Urban Meyer, I think it would have been a dysfunctional mess still. So I'm willing to give him a pass on his rookie year, and he bounced back so strong in his second year, 25-7 touchdown interception ratio, and led the Jags to one of the best playoff comebacks in the history of the NFL. Then year three, he was banged up. They lost a lot in the second half of last year. But I am still willing to bet on the high-end upside of Trevor Lawrence. We've seen glimpses in the NFL of why he was hyped up so much, and he's only 24 years old. He doesn't play a physical style, so you don't have to worry about him getting banged up. So I just think for the simple fact that he has that high-end talent, the fact that he is 24, I still think he would go really high. With the 9th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Seattle Seahawks select Jordan Love. So I feel like this is really the first big gamble of this redraft because as much as everyone wants to say, Jordan Love is not a proven commodity in the NFL. We're really looking at half a season of elite football. However, I'm willing to bet on Jordan Love because he looked incredible in those, especially in the playoff game against Dallas, where Dallas was consistently ranked as one of the best defense in the NFL last year, and he completely exposed that quote-unquote world-class defense. And I'm pretty sure he threw for like 30 touchdowns last season. You guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that's really good. And on top of that, again, we're going to keep talking about age. He's only 25 years old, so you could see him playing another 10 years of elite football. I think he's only going to get better as time goes on, obviously. Like, we just saw him play a full year as a starter this year, and he really delivered in that second half, won a playoff game, almost beat the 49ers as well. So I just think the upside's there. He's the right age. I think it's a good pick. With the 10th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Tennessee Titans select Caleb Williams. So, again, another really big gamble in this redraft, but Caleb Williams is one of the most hyped up college prospects of my lifetime. What he's expected to be, I think I'm willing to bet on that with this 10th pick. And he's only 22. So if he hits, you got your guy of the future for the next 15 years. And, you know, you look at his career in college, that Heisman year he had is legitimately one of the best college football careers. It's not talked about like that because they didn't go on to win a natty or anything, but go look at those numbers. They are, like, disgustingly good. And so I expect big things for Caleb in the NFL. I think he's going to be really good. And just for the fact that he is so young, I think he would go really high in a redraft. With the 11th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the New Orleans Saints select Kyler Murray. So I feel like Kyler is similar to some of these other guys we just talked about, like Jalen Hurts, like Trevor Lawrence, a guy that's kind of viewed lower in the NFL community than he once was. I don't really understand it. When you put in the context the fact that he was injured, the fact that they gutted the roster, and the fact that he still has that undeniable talent, I just don't really get why Kyler is viewed so low. Like, it wasn't that long ago where it was kind of the consensus to have Kyler as a top 10 quarterback. You know, you go back to like 2020, 2021, Kyler was viewed as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he got the freaking Cardinals to the playoffs. Like, over the past 5 years, the Cardinals have dealt with a lot of dysfunction, bad head coaches, poorly run, and he was able to get that franchise into the playoffs. And when he had an elite weapon in DeAndre Hopkins, he was a stud. So, yeah, no shit, you take away DeAndre Hopkins, you give him a crappy roster, he's not going to make playoffs this year. But when he came back from his injury, he showed that he could still win games basically single-handedly. I still think he's one of the best runners of the football right now. He still has that athleticism. I get it, he's a smaller guy, but he just has such a unique skill set. He really kind of reminds me of prime Russell Wilson, but probably even faster. So, yeah, and the fact that he's 26, I'm willing to bet on that upside of Kyler Murray. I still think he's going to go high in an NFL redraft. With the 12th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Jared Goff. Now, I feel like this is where you can really start having that conversation of taking one of the premier pass rushers or one of the great skill position guys over a quarterback, but I still think Jared Goff is good enough to be taken over those guys. Obviously, a quarterback is the most important position, but he's been one of the most productive players in the NFL since he got to Detroit in Ben Johnson's offensive system. He's been a production machine. He's been extremely efficient. He had some crazy streak, I think it was last season, where he just didn't throw interceptions, and I think he kind of got that, at least for me personally. I always had a reservation with Jared Goff of like, yeah, he can put up big numbers, but when it comes to the big games, he always kind of crumbles. Well, I think he's finally kind of gotten that off his back now because he went on a great run in the playoffs this year, beating his former team, the Rams, and then beating the Bucs and almost beating the 49ers. The reason they lost to the Niners was not because of Jared Goff. It was because their head coach, Dan Campbell, made some really bad decisions in that game. It's not Goff's fault they lost that. So I think he's even grown in terms of his maturity, in terms of leading a team in big games, and he just has the numbers to back all that up. So you do need to surround him, but when he has the pieces around him, he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He is 29, though, so maybe you could push back on taking him higher, like this high in the draft, but he's not leaving the pocket, so he's not taking big shots. So you could see Jared Goff playing easily another 8 years of elite football. With the 13th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Arizona Cardinals select Micah Parsons. So finally, our streak of quarterbacks is officially done. Our first non-quarterback off the board is Micah Parsons, for the simple fact that I think he's right now the third best defensive player in football behind Watt and Garrett, but he's 25 years old. He's 25. So you're getting at least 7 or 8 more years of complete dominance of this guy is going to be the best defensive player in football. It's just a matter of when. He's going to win multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards in his career. It's just a matter of when. The guy's too good. And I think once you start running out of those like B-plus level quarterbacks, this is where you're going to start getting into more of the pass rushers, some of the other positions outside of quarterback. And I think Micah Parsons would be the first non-quarterback off the board. With the 14th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Los Angeles Rams select Nick Bosa. So we continue our run of premier pass rushers. And like I said, Watt and Garrett are definitely the two best guys at that position right now. But taking an age to factor, I think Micah and Bosa do go before both those guys because they are younger. Nick Bosa's 26 years old. He's already been a Defensive Player of the Year, a year where he had 18.5 sacks. He's been just a monster since he walked into the NFL, and last year signed the biggest contract for his position in the history of the NFL. I don't know if that still stands right now, but I remember back when he signed that deal, it was a historic deal, and for good reason. The guy is a complete monster, and you're going to be getting another, 7-8 years of prime dominant pass rushing out of Nick Bosa, so I do think he goes here. With the 15th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Chicago Bears select TJ Watt. He's the best defensive player right now in football, and the only reason he isn't going higher is because he is a little older. He is at the age of 29, but I still think you're going to get another 5 years of elite, dominant, all-time pass rush production. Obviously, the Bears, kind of ironic he goes there because they're a historically defensive-oriented franchise. They get TJ Watt here, like I said, is easily the best defensive player in football. I don't even really think it's a debate. I think TJ Watt has separated into, in terms of like all time, and this isn't even me talking, this is just purely the numbers, the stats. You can go look it up. Really, his production only compares with Lawrence Taylor. That's how productive he's been, and he should have at least 3 or 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. You can call me a biased Yinzer, a biased Steelers fan all you want, but even Aaron Donald came out and said, look, TJ Watt is the best defensive guy. He should have multiple depoys. So for the fact that he is so dominant, he's really one of those few guys in the NFL that doesn't play quarterback that can drastically alter the outcome of any given game with interceptions, with sacks, with just destroying any play. He's just a complete, total wrecking ball and all-time great defensive talent. With the 16th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Myles Garrett. Clearly the second best defensive player in football, not even really close. There is a big gap. I think him and Watt are the two best. He's a worse version of Watt. I don't think he quite brings the overall destruction that Watt does. I think Watt's a more complete, more versatile player. But in terms of just being a complete fucking wrecking ball on the defensive line, that is what Myles Garrett provides. He's only 28, so he is a year younger than TJ. If you want to use that to argue to take him over TJ, I would maybe accept that. But I do think he's not as complete as TJ, but he's still, that one thing he does in terms of just destroying opposing offensive lines is so valuable. So I have him going right here. With the 17th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Carolina Panthers select Max Crosby. So, like I said, with those B-plus level quarterbacks off the board, we're continuing our run of premier pass rushers. And Max Crosby's 26 years old, so he is younger. You're going to get many more years of dominant pass rush out of Max Crosby. And at least last year, he had just as productive a season as a Garrett, as a Watt. I think he's probably in the top 5 to top 7 range of defensive players right now in the NFL, and he's only 26, so he's going to get better. He has a lot more years of elite football left in him. And another situation in this redraft where a team just barely missed out on their guy. Like we said, the Texans, they were a pick away from CJ, and the Raiders, they could have taken Crosby, but I think it's too hard to pass on Garrett in that situation. So he does fall here to 17, going to Carolina. With the 18th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Brock Purdy. So now that we've had a big run on these premium pass rushers, now that all the top tier pass rushers are off the board, I think we're going to get back to some of the quarterbacks. And now we're kind of in that B to B minus range for the quarterbacks. But obviously quarterback is the most important position. So I think we're going to see another run on these quarterbacks. So Brock Purdy, you can say what you will about him. You can say he's a beneficiary of Shanahan's system. Obviously he is, but it's not like he has no talent. I mean, I think he's better right now than Jimmy Garoppolo ever was. And you look at what they tried with Trey Lance. Like, if anyone can just walk into Shanahan's system and thrive, what the fuck happened with Trey Lance? So Brock Purdy definitely has some talent. I think a good point to make about Purdy is I think it's just he has the stigma of being Mr. Irrelevant. If you just said Brock Purdy was like a second or third round pick putting up those numbers, I think he would widely be considered a top 10 quarterback just given the numbers he put up this year. In his first year as a starting quarterback, as the full-time starter this season, he led the team to the Super Bowl and was pretty good in that Super Bowl. So I get it. You can definitely say he's playing with the Avengers and all that, but like we said, Trey Lance had that same thing. He didn't pan out. And I think Brock Purdy, he's really good, and he's only 24 years old. So even if you take him out of Shanahan's system and even if he's not as good, you're still going to get, 10 to 15 years of Brock Purdy. With the 19th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Tua Tagovailoa. So we're continuing our run of the B-tier quarterbacks now with Tua. And I get it now. It seems like everyone's starting to hate on Tua. But I still think he's really good. And people want to bash him for the fact that, he was bad in that playoff game. Well, I was one of those people too. Like, I gave Tua a lot of shit for that game, rightfully so. But you also have to take into account, number one, that was his first playoff game ever. And number two, it was against the Dynasty Chiefs in like negative 50 degrees weather. So I get it. That was bad. He has had some injury concerns all throughout his career, but when he's upright on the field, at least in the regular season, the guy does nothing but win football games. He has a really high winning rate in the regular season. He's an extremely productive quarterback. He's massively accurate. And I think that he's really getting thrown under the bus unfairly now. Is he worthy of one of those supermax contracts like we just saw Trevor Lawrence get? That's yet to be seen. But you can't deny the fact that he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. He's extremely efficient, doesn't throw a lot of picks. He makes a lot of right decisions. He puts up a lot of numbers, and he's only 24. So I think he would still go pretty high in a redraft. With the 20th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the New England Patriots select Dak Prescott. So I've been labeled as a Dak hater on this channel. I had all kinds of Cowboys telling me all throughout last year that, oh, you're just a Dak hater. I don't hate Dak. I'm not a Dak hater. I'm a Dak truth teller. And that's what the Cowboys fans hate about me because they overrate Dak, and I see Dak for what he is, and that is a fraud. Great in the regular season if your objective is to beat up on the Giants, the Commanders, the Jets. If you want to beat those type of teams, Dak is your man. But if you're looking to raise a Lombardi, Dak would be very far down on my list. That's why I can't draft him too high. And he's 30 years old. So, yeah, that's why I have guys like Tua and Brock Purdy going ahead of him. Is he better than those guys right now? Probably. I mean, maybe. I think you can make an argument for sure. But he's older than those guys by a pretty good margin. He's 30. He's had a couple injuries. I think this is right around the range where Dak would go. With the 21st pick in the NFL redraft, the Atlanta Falcons select Aiden Hutchinson. So now that I feel like those B to B- quarterbacks are off the board, I'm going to take one of the best up-and-coming pass rushers in the NFL. Just in year 2, this past year, he put up 10.5 sacks. I think he's going to go on to become one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Maybe not to the level of a Micah or a Bosa or, like Watt or Garrett or one of those guys, but I do think he's going to be one of those B+, A- level pass rushers. And he's so young. You're getting another 10 years out of this guy. It makes a lot of sense to take him right here with some of those B-tier quarterbacks off the board. With the 22nd pick in the NFL redraft, the San Francisco 49ers select Jaden Daniels. So this is probably the biggest gamble of the entire redraft for the simple fact that Jaden Daniels is not a proven commodity in the NFL. He's nowhere near the hyped-up prospect of Caleb Williams, so taking him in the first round of a redraft can be very risky. However, I believe in the upside of Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he has the physical intangibles to be a superstar in the NFL. And when you compare his numbers at LSU to Joe Burrow's Heisman year, they're pretty comparable. I just think he's too good. He's too gifted to not work out in the NFL. And he's 22. So if he hits, you have your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years. With the 23rd overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Baltimore Ravens select Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun is staying in the AFC North, going to Baltimore. I feel like he's one of the most difficult players in the NFL to rank right now. Just such a bizarre situation. We're not going to talk too much about off-the-field stuff. But just simply in terms of his play, one of the most bizarre careers we've ever seen because he was legitimately a superstar. I think a top 5 player at his position in the NFL when he was with Houston, especially those last couple of years. But we are far removed from that version of Deshaun. I mean, everything we've seen in Cleveland has been pretty rough. So I think this is it all boils down to the fact that he's a quarterback. Quarterback's the most important position. I think that they're just going to go with a QB here. And this is in the range where Deshaun is right now. He's 28. I just don't know. I really feel like he is one of the most difficult players in the NFL to rank right now. But for the simple fact he's a quarterback, we have seen him a couple years ago be an elite level guy. So I think he would go somewhere in this range. With the 24th pick in the NFL redraft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Sauce Gardner. So now that I feel like those B to B- level quarterbacks in the right age range are all kind of off the board now, I think we're going to see a big run on non-quarterbacks. So right now we have Sauce Gardner going. He's the best corner in the NFL right now. And going into year 3, he's only 23 years old. So you're going to get another 7 to 10 years of peak play out of Sauce, who could potentially, just based off the first 2 years of his career, Sauce could eventually go down as one of the best to ever do it at his position. So getting him here, I think, is a pretty good pick to start building your defense. With the 25th overall pick in the NFL redraft, my Pittsburgh Steelers select Justin Jefferson. So now that all the top-tier quarterbacks are off the board, the B-tier quarterbacks are off the board, the premium pass rushers are off the board, and Sauce, the best corner, is off the board, I think we're going to finally start to see some of these skill position players go. And Justin Jefferson right now is arguably the best skills position guy in the NFL. He's only 25 years old. There's a reason why he just inked the highest non-quarterback deal in the history of the NFL. He's a freak athlete. So we're going to start to see a run on skills position guys here. And as a Steelers fan, not too mad about this. He ended up landing on my team. You know, I did the order before I assigned the team. So I had him going 25th overall no matter what. It just so happens he's going to my team. I wouldn't be too mad at rocking a Justin Jefferson Steelers jersey. With the 26th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the New York Jets select Jamar Chase. He's only 24 years old, and I kind of view him on the same talent level as a Justin Jefferson. You know, people have said that Jefferson's kind of pulled away as the top receiver. I kind of view Jamar Chase just as talented as Justin Jefferson, and he's a year younger, so we're continuing our run of skills position guys. It just kind of really shows how important that receiver position is in today's NFL. With the 27th pick in the NFL redraft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select CeeDee Lamb. No strangers to having great wide receivers. Continuing our run on receivers here. And statistically last year, CeeDee Lamb was the second best wide receiver in the NFL, only behind Tyreek Hill. He's only 24, 25 years old, so he's right there in terms of age with the other guys we just talked about, and probably right there from a talent perspective. With the 28th overall pick in the NFL redraft, the Indianapolis Colts select Patrick Surtain II. Some people will tell you right now that Patrick Surtain is the best cornerback in football. I would go Sauce. I would probably even take Jalen Ramsey still over Patrick Surtain, but there is a good amount of people out there that will tell you he is the best corner in the entire league, and he's only 24 years old. So I think this is great value to get him here. With the 29th pick in the NFL redraft, the Washington Commanders select Chris Jones. So he has been an integral piece of the Chiefs dynasty, and he's the best run stopper in the entire NFL. So you might ask, why isn't he higher up in this class in the draft? Why isn't he around the range of TJ or Myles Garrett? Well, it's because he's more of a run stopper. You know, he plays interior defensive line. He's not on the edge, so he is the best run stopper in the entire NFL, and he can get at the quarterback, but he's not primarily a pass rusher. That's why I don't have him going in the range of Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. And he is 29. So you're probably only getting like 3 or 4 more years of really good football out of Chris Jones, but he is one of the best players in the NFL right now, so he had to go in the first round. The 30th pick in the NFL redraft, the Green Bay Packers select Anthony Richardson. I know this is a big gamble, but I think a team in this range, seeing all those quarterbacks off the board, all the premier defensive guys basically off the board at this point, I think a team in this range would be willing to gamble on the upside of Anthony Richardson. An extremely small sample size we saw of him in the NFL, really like 3.5 games, but in those games as a rookie, looked really good, showed really strong promise, and he's only 22 years old. With the 31st pick in the NFL redraft, the Dallas Cowboys select Christian McCaffrey. I really struggled putting a running back here, but for the simple fact that I think you can make a legit case that he's a top 5 player in the NFL. He's the best running back in the NFL and also provides the dual threat ability as a wide receiver. He's one of the most unique offensive weapons we've ever seen in the NFL and can kind of single-handedly carry an offense. I think that that's good enough to go in the first round, even though he's at a very undesirable position in running back where we've seen the market value of running backs completely be depleted. Christian McCaffrey has been the complete outlier at that position and is the highest paid running back in the NFL by far for a reason, because he provides that dual threat ability and is just so skilled. So he goes right here just at the end of the first round. And with the 32nd pick in the NFL redraft, the Denver Broncos select Baker Mayfield. I think it makes the most sense at this point in time. He's the best quarterback available on the board. You know, there are some guys like Stafford. I think he's too old, though, at 36. Baker being 28, coming off the best year of his career, it makes sense at this range. There's no real premium defensive guys that I'd want to take over a quarterback. So Baker Mayfield is your final pick of this first round of my NFL redraft. So let me know down in the comments what you thought of my order, and let me know what player your team ended up getting, and are you happy with the player your team got? If you made it this far, really appreciate you giving this a listen. Please like and subscribe.